Now, everything that I want to do as your president to build on our Democratic presidents who've gone before can't be done if folks won't vote or can't vote. We have to defend the most fundamental right in our democracy, the right to vote. No one in this state, no one should ever forget the history that enabled generations of people left out and left behind to finally be able to vote. My first job in national politics was registering voters in Texas. And I care deeply that, first of all, we convince people that their vote counts, but that we stand firmly against barriers that are being constructed today to discourage, even intimidate people from voting. I know that you've got a real struggle on your hands in this state right now over that. I want you to remember, when you vote, when anyone votes, your vote matters as much as anybody else's. Now, we may be up against super PACs and billionaires, but when the election comes around, Donald Trump and the Koch brothers, for all their money, they only get one vote each, just like everybody else. One person, one vote. That's what we believe. No one should be able to take that vote away. That's why we cannot turn away, close our eyes from all of the attacks on voting rights that are happening right now. They don't just threaten the integrity of our elections, although they do. They threaten what it means to be a citizen, indeed what it means to be an American. Now, here in Alabama, without the right kind of ID, it's nearly impossible to vote. And I followed when Governor Bentley and his administration announced plans this month to close 31 driver's license offices across the state. They include every single county where African Americans make up more than 75% of registered voters. And the closings will make getting driver's licenses and personal identification cards much harder for many African Americans, particularly the elderly, erecting a big barrier to voting. As many of you have said, and as your Congresswoman eloquently said on this stage just moments ago, this is wrong. 50 years after Rosa Parks sat and Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. marched and John Lewis bled, it is hard to believe that we are back having this same debate about whether or not every American gets a chance to vote and exercise his rights. This is a blast from the Jim Crow past. And you know, we hear the same excuses we've always heard to justify laws that disproportionately affect people of color, or for that matter, low-income people, women, young people, seniors. Whenever I hear somebody trying to justify what is so clearly unjustifiable, claiming that it has nothing to do with denying voting rights, I'm reminded of an old saying that I heard for the first time when I lived in Arkansas. You find a turtle on a fence post, it didn't get there by accident. All of these obstacles to voting didn't happen on their own. But for every Republican governor working to roll back voting rights, there are Americans determined to keep marching forward. I'm proud of everyone in Alabama who leapt into action to confront this misguided decision to close driver's licenses offices. And you've got people all over this nation who are rooting for you and standing with you. And it's time for your governor and the legislature not only to listen to their constituents, but listen to their conscience about what it means to be a leader in our country. Those offices should stay open, and not just for one day a month. But that's not all. Alabama is one of 17 states with no early voting. That needs to change. If a family leaving church on the Sunday before Election Day feel inspired to go out and vote, they should be able to. People who have served their time should also have their voting rights restored. You know, I'm here in Alabama, so of course I'm talking about Alabama, but I could be in a couple dozen states talking about this. I'm not picking on Alabama. I just think we got to stop this before it gets out of control. And before people in power start picking and choosing who gets to have a voice and a vote. Believe me, they won't stop with rural counties and driver's license offices, right? We should be doing everything we can to get more people into our political process, not turn them away when they try to participate. And the many states that have passed laws making voting harder did so since the Supreme Court gutted a key provision of the Voting Rights Act. And you listen to the folks running for president on the Republican side. Now Jeb Bush says he wouldn't reauthorize the Voting Rights Act because voting conditions have improved since it was passed. I voted to reauthorize the Voting Rights Act when I was in the United States Senate, and President George W. Bush signed it, so he clearly thought it was still needed. And this idea we don't need it anymore, well, Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, I think, put it very well when she said, that's like throwing away your umbrella in a rainstorm because you're not getting wet. If a law is working, we should let it keep working. When asked recently about voter ID laws, Senator Marco Rubio replied, what's the big deal? John Kasich restricted early voting in Ohio after the 2008 election when 77% of early voters in the most populated county were African Americans. What part of democracy are these Republicans so afraid of? You know, I've won elections and I've lost elections, but I sure feel better when as many people as possible show up and vote to make their choice. Now, many of the leaders who marched and fought for the right to vote are no longer alive to stop these abuses, but we are. And we have an obligation to act. First, Congress should put principle ahead of politics and pass the Voting Rights Advancement Act. This is a bipartisan bill. You don't hear about many of those. It is a bipartisan bill that would restore the full protections of the Voting Rights Act. And it's your Congresswoman's bill, which is only appropriate since she does represent Selma. Thank you, Terry. Second, we should set a standard across our country of at least 20 days of early in-person voting, including opportunities for weekend and evening voting. Third, we should enact universal automatic voter registration so every young person in every state is automatically registered to vote when they turn 18 unless they opt out. I applaud California for beginning to implement a similar approach starting last week, and more states should follow. We need to meet this moment with the bravery and determination of those who came before us, and once again, The movement can start right here in Alabama. Progress is going to take every one of us doing our part. As president, I will be your partner and your champion. As I said the other night, I'm a progressive who likes to get things done. And I know how to stand my ground and how to find common ground. That's what we need to move us forward.